Gansky here with Typewriter Tuesday. Well, okay, not Typewriter Tuesday anymore. We're rebranding it as TypeCast. Why? Well, people got the idea that Typewriter Tuesday meant there would be videos on, Tuesday. And that doesn't always work for my schedule. So I'm recasting this, rebranding this as TypeCast, as the new name for the videos I do about typewriters. And type because typewriter, and cast because it's a video cast. So you put the two together and we end up with TypeCast, which is a nice play on words, and authors love play on words. So today we're going to come back to doing some of our work on typewriters. I want to show you a very special one in just a little bit. I know what you're asking. Where have you been? I got tied up doing some editing projects, several of them, one after the other. And I just wasn't able to do these videos or any other videos that I had in the queue. But I'm back now. Thank you for being patient with me. And I want to show you one of my favorite typewriters. And it was a bit of a surprise to me. And I almost tripped over it. Literally tripped over it. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Again, this is Alton Gansky, altongansky.com. And this is Typewriter Tuesday, now called TypeCast. Thanks for joining me. Hang in there. Hi, Al Gansky again, altongansky.com, and here we have something rather special. Now, I know I don't normally start with the case, but this is such a beautiful case, I wanted you to be able to see it. And it's also what caught my eye and led me to this particular typewriter. I was in a Central California coastal city called Cambria, one of my favorite places to go, and we were making the rounds to some of our favorite places when we go on a typewriter hunt. And ended up in an antique shop where I'd had a little luck before. And as we walked in, I'm walking through the shop and I notice on the floor, right in the middle of the floor, I almost tripped over this thing, literally, almost went over on my nose, I saw this case. Now, first of all, I thought, well, this is a lovely case. And then I thought, it looks kind of familiar. And then I realized what I was looking at. A little while back, another person who does these kinds of videos for typewriters and does it with his children sometimes, called Typewriter Minutes. If you're not following that, I suggest you hop over to YouTube and subscribe to that. They do a great job. Had done a video on this particular typewriter, and I remembered the case. And so I quickly picked it up and decided I was going to look into it. The case is in great shape, needs just a little cleaning, but that's not a big deal. The catch and the lock are a little tarnished, but not a real problem. Yeah. So let me take a little look here and show you what's inside. So we try to do this with one hand. And there it is, a Facit typewriter. Let me remove this lid and I'll be right back with you. Notice how red this is and the red inside. It's really an absolutely beautiful cover. And you'll notice right here, made in Sweden. And they're very proud of this. Facit was a company in Sweden, and they made excellent typewriters. And this particular typewriter, which we're going to look at in just a second, is called a TP1. And collectors love this typewriter. I was especially surprised to look inside and find that it had the manual. I always love to get the ancillary stuff that comes with these. Doesn't happen often. Has that. They want to teach you how to touch type. So this is actually a card you set up on your desk to remind you where to put your fingers. It's got a little stand on the back. Pretty nifty. And then something I've never seen on any other typewriter is this. It says Facit on it. And what does this thing do? It fits over the keyboard and you put your hands underneath it so you can't see the keys, and therefore all your typing has to be touch typing. Kind of remarkable. I don't know that I could do much typing with something covering my hands like that, but nonetheless, there it is. So here it is in the base, and if you new to typewriter collecting, typewriter cases almost always, not always, but almost always have a very narrow bottom section and a very big top section that we were just looking at. And that's a giveaway that it's not some other kind of device in there, but a typewriter. Now later they'll go to typewriters look more like suitcases. And speaking of that, this is so nice with all the leather the stitching, that Facit used to, in their literature, talk about this being used, that is the case being used, as an overnight bag. You can throw some stuff in for a quick trip. You know, if your typewriter's out, you just use it as a little piece of luggage. And it's actually nice enough to do that. This is a great, great typewriter. And almost every time you come across somebody who has finally acquired one, they're very excited. It is great in many respects. This is from 1963. And one of the reasons I wanted to look at this typewriter this time is, of course, what happened in 1963 on November 22nd was the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And just this last week, the time that I'm recording this, they're released what used to be classified information about the assassination, and I forget how many thousands of pages are involved in that, but it is quite a bit. So I thought this would be a good time to talk about this. It's from that era, 1963, same year of the assassination, and in fact, the inspection, let's go ahead and pop the top on this and get a little more light on it here, if I can. There we go. It says inspected, and if we look close enough, you see it was inspected in March of 1963. So it is definitely right from that era. The hood back on, the bonnet, if we want to call it that. Let's take a quick look at this, and I'll point out several things. Of course, Facit up front, and it's very stylized. You would expect that for something that we're getting into the mid-1960s, so early 1960s to mid-1960s. Keyboard is absolutely great. You see that we have a one key, so it's got all of those characters. The keys themselves, sort of a inverted tombstone design, very well dished. Fingers fit on it nicely. You know exactly where you are. It is a great typer. This happens to be the smaller type, the elite type, and but it still looks good. Congress is the typeface that's being used on it, and it is absolutely beautiful to look at. So let me get it out of the case so we can take a little closer look. I'll be right back with you. Well, we're back. Here is the typewriter out of its lovely case, and I wanted to do that because there's a few details that'll be difficult to see if it remains in the case. Now, one of the interesting stories about this is that the industrial designer who did the body and the overall design for the appearance of the typewriter is, or was, I should say, royalty. He was the great-grandson of Queen Victoria, and he was in the Swiss royal line. He was a prince, and he gave up all of that for his first marriage. He married a commoner, and that cost him his right for ascension. I don't know how close he would have been to ascension, but anyway, for his right to take that position in the royal family. And so it was one of those things sacrificed for love. But I believe he divorced 9 years after that. So he became an industrial designer. Industrial designers are those people who bring artistic talent, mechanical talent, everything to make some object, some of commercial value, to make it work for the end user. And so it was with this typewriter. And it's considered one of the most beautiful typewriters. Now, you may not get that feeling right from the start. This is one of those things where the beauty is in the details of this design. And by details, I mean, you know, the overall appearance. As we look at this and we go, well, it's gray, and they called it Viking gray. It's very plain, and it's meant to be that way. It makes it easier on the eyes if you're spending a lot of time at this typewriter. This is a heavy typewriter for its size. For being a portable, it's one of the heavier ones that I have. As we take, again, a closer look at it, we see we've got all the major keys that we're used to, and if you followed any of these, you know, we've talked about it. One of the great things it has that most typewriters don't is this little thing right here, and this locks the carriage. Normally, a carriage lock is found on one side or the other of the carriage itself. There'll be a little lever down here, sometimes underneath, sometimes sticking out a little bit. It varies from model to model, but on this one, they put it right up front, and it's one of those details. You can pull it, push it down, pull it forward, and it will lock the carriage, so when you put it in the case, it won't, the carriage won't be slamming back and forth. It has the ribbon, these beautiful little dots, the ribbon selector, and you can see it's bichrome. It has black and it has red, and of course then it has the stencil with it. General shift lock, again on these fabulous keys, has just everything you need. But it also, notice it has a tab key, which is great. By this time you'd think that most typewriters will have a tab key. But the way you set the tabs is a little different on this. So as we spin around here a little bit, we're going to see a lever. And this lever has a 1 on it. It's a lever on the left side, and you can set tabs with it. You can push it down and it sets a tab. And that's fine. You can set it for whatever you want, like every 5 spaces, every 10 spaces. But if we switch around to the other side, there is another little chrome lever. And it doesn't have a numeral on it. It has the letter B. And I cannot tell you why it's a B. I've looked in the manual, and they don't tell us what the B stands for. So maybe it's something in the Swiss language or something. I really don't know why, but it's there. But what this does is it will clear all previous tabs, and it will do preset tabs, meaning that it will go to preset settings here. I think I have my, I had the carriage lock there, sorry about that. And that's all preset with just a touch. So you can clear what's there and you can go to their preset tabs, or you can set your own. I'm not familiar with or know of any other typewriter that allows you the choice between customizing your tabs or having the typewriter set it for you. Usually it's one or the other. So I think that's a fascinating thing. Another fascinating thing about this is what the carriage rides on. And you see that right here. This is a tube, and inside the tube, and we're not going to be able to see it here, but there are ball bearings in that tube. And the carriage is connected to a rod that goes through those ball bearings, and it makes for the smoothest carriage action ever. It is just remarkable. It doesn't grind. It's just the easiest, smoothest thing. It's just on rails, and I'm really, really impressed with that. Again, usual stuff. We have a type bar, excuse me. We have paper bail. We have nifty double paper stand. So that's real nice. It is a carriage shift, excuse me, it is a basket shift, segmented shift, shift mechanism. So in other words, the type basket drops rather than trying to lift the whole carriage when you want to type a capital letter. Very easy to do. Knobs are just fabulous. They're simple. And this is where we start seeing some of the detail of the design. First of all, I love the back. Notice how it says Facit in these little circles. Just absolutely fascinating. And it's kind of the art that you would expect from the mid-60s. Notice very proudly they display the fact that it's Swiss, and Swiss made some of the best typewriters, Hermes 3000 probably being the most famous of them. Fabulous, fabulous typewriters in that. Now let me ask, do you need these buttons to say Facit? It says Facit on the front. Do you really need that? No, it's all design. And little shot lines from where the carriage is. Now, those of you that like remodeled cars and the like, you'll understand the term shot line. That's where two pieces of metal meet, and notice how even it is. It's not crooked. It is just beautiful all the way across. Now, the other details, remember I said it's in the details where you see the beauty of this, is along these edges. Now, most typewriters here will either be rounded or squared, but this has what we used to call in architecture, back in my architecture days, we used to just call a relief. It's a relief line. And it isn't rounded, it's flat. And you get just a little edge, not sharp, but just a little edge, and it gives a different look to this. This is one of those typewriters where you appreciate it more when you touch it. You feel it, you kind of get a feel for all of this. It is all aluminum with great paint on it. No rusting on the body because of the way they've prepared this. It is just a fabulous little typewriter. One of the best that I've seen. I really like it. And this particular one, it was very clean. A little touch-up necessary. The platen is a little hard, but you'd expect that. Remember, it's 1963, so it's a lot of years, a lot of decades have passed, but it still works quite well. The mechanism, the gearing for the shifting or the turning of the platen, all very solid. In the back, we have margin settings. Very, very special typewriter, and it is an absolute pleasure to type on. Great design and fascinating history. So we have the history of Sigvard Bernadotte, which I hope I have his name right, who was the industrial designer and of Swiss royalty, who did the design on this. He did lots of other designs. He did the designs of silverware, things for the kitchen, for furniture, the kind of things that industrial designers did in those days and in these days. But he did just a terrific, terrific job on this. Interestingly enough, this will be followed by a TP2, another edition, which is larger and is not as loved as this one. Here you can see the rod I was talking about earlier that goes through that tube to help things out. So this is one of those that I think every collector ought to have. It's just a lot of fun to use and to type on. Well, let's just do a little typing on it to give you an example of that. And maybe you'll appreciate the ease at which this thing moves and the way it sounds when it types. Be right back. Because the platen, this rubber portion of the carriage, is so hard, I like to use 2 pieces of paper when I type. It gives it a little more cushion and it allows the type to read a little bit better. They recommend in their paperwork to use paper that's not too shiny. Otherwise, you don't see the typeface as well. And they use a special typeface on this and the way they created the typeface, which is, I think, very interesting. But let's give this a little shot here. Use the usual line. Quick Brown Fox jumps over the lazy dog. And let's do it all in caps now. Quick Brown Fox jumps over the lazy dog. And let's try it in red. The dog then pounces on the arrogant fox. And it's as smooth as can be. So there's a little typing sample. We could spend a lot of time typing, but I think you get the idea with it. It is a lovely piece of work. Now is the time for all good typists to come to the aid of typewriters. Whoops. Everywhere. And there it is. Well, this is Alton Gansky, altongansky.com. Thank you for joining me at TypeCast, formerly known as Typewriter Tuesday. I hope you have a great week.